You're typing something in Google about Chapter 13 bankruptcy, and naturally it's helping you finish the phrase with Chapter 13 bankruptcy horror stories. And you're wondering, horror stories? What does that even mean? I thought this was gonna help me get out of debt and face all my debt collection lawsuits, or stop a garnishment or stop a foreclosure. There can be horror stories, so we're gonna cover all of that and more in this video, so let's get started. Welcome to the Ascend Finance YouTube channel, where we cover complex topics such as Chapter 13 bankruptcy and try to break it down into human, simple, understandable language. My name is Ben, and I am the co-founder here at Ascend. Now, just for reference, this is just informational purposes and not legal advice. And so if you do need to talk to an attorney for a free consultation, we can help with that. But I just wanted to let you know about Chapter 13 bankruptcy horror stories. So there's some good things about Chapter 13 bankruptcy, right? It gives you a flexible debt repayment plan, which allows you to make your repayments according to your financial situation. It's a long-term plan that benefits are potentially worth considering, right? You get an automatic stay from your creditors, so no more, debt collection lawsuits. It can help you catch up on potential missed payments on your home, maybe missed payments on your car. It could reduce potentially your interest rate on your car in some level. But, a lot of people, you're probably still wondering well, what are the horror stories then? Come on, get to it, right? So let's cover those right now. So Chapter 13 bankruptcy, you probably already heard a lot of pros, right? So let's get into the nuts and bolts on kind of where the horror stories lie, right? And some specific stories. Also, if this video is encouraging, I always would love a subscribe if you're interested in learning more about, Chapter 13 bankruptcy or Chapter 7 bankruptcy or any other debt relief option to help you get out of debt cheaper, easier, and faster. So I'm giving you some potential benefits of Chapter 13 bankruptcy, but you're not here for the benefits. You're looking for the horror stories. So let's get right into that. Also, if you want to get out of debt cheaper, easier, and faster and want to kind of join our community, please feel free to subscribe, because we're always kind of making content to help you get out of debt cheaper, easier, and faster through understanding your different options. So when I talk to people that have had a Chapter 13 bankruptcy story that has been horrible, right? Like one that they were like, this is ruining my life. It often comes down to the Chapter 13 monthly payment plan, right? So the Chapter 13 payment plan is often based on the Chapter 13 bankruptcy forms, right? Those kind of set the precedent of how much you're going to be paying every month in your Chapter 13 bankruptcy. The challenge with these forms are they're actually really confusing and complex, right? And so it's hard to know if you're going to face a Chapter 13 horror story before actually signing the dotted line to do a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. And as we saw that happening so many times, people were just like, oh my goodness, we actually built a free Chapter 13 bankruptcy calculator that estimates the exact payment plan for you. That's just based on the bankruptcy forms, right? We were able to take this really complex thing and kind of dumb it down into a little bit less complex, right? So I include a link in the description below of the Chapter 13 calculator, but hopefully that gives you a sense of your starting payment plan. That could give you a sense of whether you're going to actually face a horror story. And so let's talk about horror stories related to the payment plan, right? So when you have this payment plan, let's say it's $500 a month, right? Let's say you increase your income, right, during that time. And let's say you're not on a 100% Chapter 13 plan where you're paying back 100% of your creditors. Your payment may increase, right? Because they're like, oh, you have more disposable income. We're going to take that disposable income. Let's say you're paying a car payment, right? And now you just finished paying your car, right? Now you have extra disposable income. So you can kind of see how a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, the payment plan could be really challenging, because as you're making more money, the trustee may be taking more money, right? So let's look at 5 different examples, right, of different, Chapter 13 bankruptcy stories of individuals, right? So the lady I interacted with basically said she started with working with a Chapter 13 bankruptcy lawyer who would occasionally modify her Chapter 13 payment plan and charge an extra $1,000 for each modification. So she kind of just explained how she's struggling with debt already, and she couldn't keep up with all of these additional charges. But since she didn't know how Chapter 13 works in the legal system, she somehow became obligated to pay these modification payments, and she struggled with all the payments, and it ended up making her financial situation worse. One of the common challenges with Chapter 13 bankruptcy is that your attorney often gets their full attorney fees during the payment plan, and the courts, before you get a granted discharge. So, from an incentive standpoint, they want to be getting new clients, right? And so it can be challenging for attorneys, and I don't blame them at all, but it can be challenging for attorneys if a complication happens on a plan where they're not making any more income from that plan. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. So that's the first story. Okay, the second story is someone where their increased their income. So you're probably wondering why an increase in income could actually relate to a horror story. So when filing bankruptcy, the court considers your income, expenses, disposable income, right? And our Chapter 13 calculator kind of estimates it at the time of now, right? It'll take your income and estimate what your payment would be. But when your income increases, the Chapter 13 plan payment may get adjusted to show that increase in income, right? So let's say you are dealing with inflation, right? And your income is going up, but your plan payment is going up, and it's not helping you actually manage some of those payments for food and things at the same level as inflation is increasing, right? So that can be a challenge for some people. Okay, the third is like a trustee raising a motion to increase the payment, kind of related to the same thing, but after filing bankruptcy, you get a trustee. The trustee recommends to the court about your case. And so I found this lady that shared a story about how she got laid off and changed companies, which increased her insurance premiums. And she explained how the trustee assigned to her a case. She wanted to take $197 car payment, which she just finished paying to her unsecured creditors. This means that the trustee may demand an additional funds to repay unsecured creditors. Another horror story is about property not included in the case, right? So when you file bankruptcy with the court, you generally disclose all your property and assets. And an individual shares details about their case where they had 60% of their take-home pay taken out because of the inspection of their home left $2,000 in property from their case. The individual mentioned how they had to take some high interest loans to meet their monthly payments, which caused further financial strain. And to make matters worse, this person was unable to reach their attorney, kind of like I had mentioned before, and the court had to be dismissed. But fortunately, they were actually able to convert it into a Chapter 7 case, which is another thing that I'm going to put in the description below. Just a Chapter 13, Chapter 7 conversion thing, because sometimes people may file Chapter 13 for one reason, but then they actually need to convert it or want to convert it later on in the case. And the final, Chapter 13 bankruptcy horror story that we're going to talk about is this individual that got a notice of dismissal a month before completing the repayment plan. Now, after the court agrees to your structured repayment plan, assuming for 5 years, you need to commit to it. And the goal is to receive a bankruptcy discharge and a fresh financial start at the end of that. Sadly, this doesn't always happen. And this individual, shared her story about how she committed to a 5-year plan, but received a notice of dismissal a month before completing the plan. And the dismissal notice noted a lack of feasibility with a hearing date. And she basically said the creditors wanted her to continue paying a loan that was included in the plan, right? And so it was really hard for her to kind of deal with that. Okay, so now before we finish, let's just cover 5 steps to avoid kind of falling victim to a Chapter 13 bankruptcy horror story. First is recognize the importance of your Chapter 13 repayment plan, helping understanding, the structure of that, what's going to happen in your future. The repayment plan is so important. So just understanding how and the changes, right? Like, is it a 3-year plan? Is it a 5-year plan? Like, are you going to be able to get out of this? Like, what could happen in the next 3 years? I know it's hard to figure that out, but that might be helpful. The other thing that can be helpful is compare bankruptcy to other debt relief options before filing, right? There are a lot of alternatives. I'll include a link to the description below to all these 10 different bankruptcy alternatives. When it comes to debt relief in your situation, there's no one size fits all approach, right? Each individual has different things that they're facing, different goals, right? And so kind of understanding those goals it can be really helpful. That's one thing to consider, right? Is all your other options. Now, the third thing is comparing Chapter 13 bankruptcy to Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Chapter 13 bankruptcy, a payment plan, and it's 3 to 5 years. A Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you can get discharged from your debt in 3 to 5 months versus 3 to 5 years, right? And it can be 1/3 the price of a Chapter 13 bankruptcy or more, right? Because attorneys are often charged a lot more for Chapter 13 bankruptcy, right? So just understanding the differences there. The fourth thing is consulting an attorney for a free phone evaluation. We include a link in the description below if you'd like a free evaluation with a local bankruptcy attorney. But if you do file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, ask them about the process. If your case is good, the additional fees, comparing that to Chapter 7 bankruptcy. If you file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy without an attorney, I believe the numbers are under 3% based on a study that they actually result in discharge. So, an attorney can definitely and potentially help in this situation. And finally, the fifth thing is creating a budget. Life is unpredictable. A lot can happen in 3 or 5 years. So, creating a separate budget that you can account for different scenarios, such as losing your job or increased income, can help you not face a Chapter 13 bankruptcy horror story. So final question, is Chapter 13 bankruptcy bad? After reading the horror stories, you might be wondering, Chapter 13 bankruptcy is bad, right? Or good, right? And there are a lot of stories about Chapter 13 bankruptcy has helped people get a financial start, right? So it can be a really good thing. But it's also good to understand these different horror stories to help you make the most informed decision. Hopefully this video is helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. And if you want other videos about Chapter 13 bankruptcy or Chapter 7 or debt relief, please consider subscribing because we always are creating new content to help you get out of debt cheaper, easier, and faster. Thanks for watching.